Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. From the right, I'm Gary Polland.
And from the left, I'm David Jones.
Tonight we welcome two guests, City Councilman Stephen Costello and Bruce Hotze, CEO of Compressor Engineering Corporation. And tonight we're going to be talking about Renew Houston and issues related to the city of Houston, both fiscal and, I guess, any other. I guess that's pretty broad enough, huh, David?
He's an at-large city council member.
That's right, so he has interests all over the place. So, Stephen, Renew Houston, what is it?
Well, Renew Houston is a public advocacy group advocating for the creation of a dedicated funding source for streets and drainage, really basically an enterprise fund. Very similar to our water and sewer is set up in an enterprise fund. Streets and drainage would be the same thing.
Okay, why do we need to renew Houston?
Well, right now, based on information from Public Works, about 65% of our street and drainage system is beyond its useful life. That current value is about $10 billion. And we're reinvesting back in at less than $100 million. So in 100 years, we could never catch up. So this is an idea to set up a dedicated funding source. So within 20 to 30 years, we could literally replace our entire system.
So when President Obama ran for office the last election, he talked about our infrastructure in the country not being where it should be. We have bridges falling apart in other states and the like. So is this basically the equivalent of what he was talking about and what's happened in other areas, that we've neglected the infrastructure?
You're asking Steve Costello if this is Obama's stimulus program?
Well, no, but that'd be a good question.
Well, it's actually a classic example of most major metropolitan areas is the fact that they are avoiding reinvesting in the infrastructure. As an engineer, I believe that our infrastructure is the foundation of our community, and we need to reinvest in our infrastructure because it's a quality of life, public safety, and economic development issue. And so what's happening here now is our drainage and street system is actually funded through the general fund. And because the general fund, over 60% of it is in public safety, all the other services that the city provide for are competing for that piece, the remainder of the budget. And during the budget process, you don't really have anyone advocating for streets and drainage. You have people advocating for parks, libraries, solid waste, community development, housing. Those are all noteworthy causes, but because they don't advocate for drainage, that's what happens here.
So, Mr. Hotze, this is Steve Costello is an engineer. I'm sure you don't dispute that we have this crumbling infrastructure. Are you, however, suspicious that it's maybe, as a comment in the Chronicle that I read, a full employment relief act for engineers?
Well, it certainly might be a full employment for engineers and construction people who are in this downtime, need some business someplace, and the place to look would be the city. Certainly $10 billion over 10 years is a whole lot of money. So if we're expected to fund $10 billion, and I've heard the number $13 billion from them, that's a lot of money. I figured that is, if it's an annual spending of, if they're looking for $13 billion, that's $650 million a year. That's, if you taxed every household, that'd be $1,625 per household. So some people who have larger houses would pay more, and some that have smaller would pay less. But if it was per capita, it would be $288 per capita for every person in the city of Houston. That's a heck of a lot of money. And in a recession, we certainly can't afford this, and we can't afford to do this for 20 and 40 years. Maybe 60 years is what they're talking about, on 20-year time period, and the politicians will set what the tax fees are going to be. I think it's a terrible idea in these times, certainly.
Well, Stephen, Bruce raises a good question, which is how do we pay for this without raising taxes significantly on working Houstonians?
Actually, the fund will be dedicated. A dedicated funding source would have three sources. The first would be a developer impact fee for any new development that they impact the existing drainage system, provided that it's not adequate in place at the current time. The second one would be a drainage user fee that we would all pay to help replace the existing system. On average, it's about $5 per residential lot. Obviously, the smaller lots would pay less and the large lots would pay more. And then the conservative approach is that the lion's share of the money in the outer years will come from a pay-as-you-go plan, converting the existing debt that the city has spent over the last 50 years in streets and drainage, folding it into the plan, and as the debt becomes amortized, the balance of the money continues and stays in the program. What the city has done historically over the years is they have constantly refinanced the debt, so the debt model is flat. What we're saying is put the money in the program, the old debt, and as the debt expires, continue to fund that program with the same level of funding, and the balance of the money goes into capital improvements.
The mayor wasn't exactly enthusiastic in her endorsement of this petition drive, was she, Bruce?
I don't know. From what I've read, she hasn't said that she's really in great favor of this. But it's still a lot of money, and there's a minimum. You say in here in this petition, it's a minimum of $125 million of new charges. That's a minimum. That's what you're saying. And if that's a minimum, that's $55 per person per capita. It's not $5. So maybe it's $5 a month. It's not per house. I don't know where your math is, but you need a new calculator, new batteries to figure it out. It's $312 per household. If there are 400,000 households or 2.5 million people, that's $55 per person per year. It's not $5.50.
Okay, so Bruce,
it's a huge number.
Yeah,
in these times.
I guess what you're saying is this is going to cost money to do this program.
Yeah.
But the question really is Stephen right that what we have is a situation where we've neglected the infrastructure of this city for years and years, and these bills are going to come due at some point, and we're going to have to pay, and it's better to do it now than it is to wait when things start collapsing, falling apart, bridges falling down, etc.
Well, I wouldn't go to the Public Works Department and ask the Public Works Department about how much spending they want to spend and how big they want to grow their empire. I think that's the wrong place. And I think the other idea that he has, that this fund is going to be sacrosanct and it can't go back into the general fund, is just wrong. He doesn't know what state law is. He doesn't know that the charter will not trump state law. It didn't trump state law on Mayor White's charter change on water and sewer rates that said the water and sewer rates can't go up any faster than inflation and population. Water and sewer rates are going up 30%. A Travis County judge on Monday held that they can go up 30%, and to heck with the charter change. So for him to say that this is the case, he doesn't know what the law says. There is no such thing as putting that money and isolating it via charter change. State law trumps it, and that money will be sucked off and put into the general fund, just as the water and sewer rate increases will be.
Well, we certainly don't want to get into a lawyer show, but I do think it's fair to ask Councilmember Costello something that other people are commenting on in the Chronicle when I read stories, which has to do with, is this a duplicative effort given that we've got a Harris County flood control district, given that we had millions of dollars that came our way after Allison? And the question is, was that all wasted on engineering projects that haven't been successful thus far?
No, the issue has to do with the fact that you actually have two sister agencies, one responsible for drainage and one responsible for flooding. And we actually work together. The city's responsible for a drop of water that hits the rooftop till it gets to the bayou, and flood control district is responsible for the bayou. Now, we currently work with the district hand in hand to make sure that our capital improvement projects don't adversely impact downstream properties. We will continue to have to do that. We have to go to a more regional and sub-regional approach to drainage. And so we're currently doing that with Harris County Flood Control District under a program called FloodWise, where it's a joint agency project between the city, Harris County Flood Control District, and TxDOT. So we are working together on a sister program.
When was this cooked up, this idea? I mean, you just got elected to city council in 2009, as I recall. And now we have this very massive undertaking. 22,000 signatures are needed. One person in the Chronicle comment said, who are these folks? Is on the petition, can you call anybody?
Well, actually, this particular program started back in 2002 with Mayor Brown. They recognized the problem that drainage was an underfunded utility. And obviously that didn't pass because they tried to do it through council action. What Renew Houston saw was, we need to do this program. It's not that we can't do it, we have to do it. And so let's let the voters decide whether or not they want to fund this particular program rather than having 15 people on council decide. And that's the difference between the two.
I wanted to get back to cost because, I mean, you've given the professional discussion of what the impacts are going to be. Bruce has talked about dividing up the numbers by population. He comes up with a number, but for the average homeowner who lives in the city of Houston, what are they going to pay per year if Renew Houston passes?
Okay. Obviously, Mr. Hotze does not have all the numbers. It's nice that he quoted the numbers that he did, but it's actually a matrix of numbers. We only have about 400,000 households in the city of Houston, and that money will generate about half the fund. The balance of the fund will come from institutions, industrial areas, commercial areas, apartments. We will all share in that. But in a single family household of an average lot of 5,000 square foot with a standard size house of a 2,000 square foot footprint would be $5 a month.
So
or
$60 a year.
Why have homeowners pay anything, though? I mean, we're getting nickel and dimed. I mean, you've got developers in this town that haven't paid their fair share for a long time. Only recently have they been asked to step up to the plate. Was there no way that you could have come up with financing this other than by tacking on the homeowner fee?
Well, historically, what the city has done in the past is they've sold bonds every 5 or 6 years, on the average of about $100 million. And yet our debt service on that $100 million now is $160 million. So the conversion of a pay-as-you-go is the best way to do this, which is something the city has never done before. We're just paying for mistakes in the past. We're not improving our system. We're not upgrading our system. We're essentially just maintaining our system, and it's decaying day in and day out.
Well, and you talked about the decay and the need. If we don't do anything, are we facing a crisis?
Well, we're always facing a crisis in terms of our infrastructure.
I guess it depends where you live.
It depends
like when
where
the
you
water
live.
mains blow out and the water's going all over the place, or the street collapses because the old storm sewer is, I guess, worn out. I guess those things happen.
We have a lot of areas in our city that the streets are avoided by most people because you don't want to drive down them anymore. We have a lot of areas in our city that a simple rainfall event shuts down that road for hours at a time. We shouldn't have those problems. And those are the problems that we need to solve.
So you need to endorse some sort of climate change.
Yeah, I was thinking that if you could just change it from not raining in Houston anymore, we wouldn't have flooding. But you aren't going to stop that. When it rains and comes down in a deluge, so the roads are designed to flood. They are designed to flood so the houses won't flood. That's the way they do it. So to complain about that is silly. If you want money, Metro owes the city $160 million. Why don't we go get the money from Metro right away that they owe the city for their percentage of taxes that they were supposed to come back? Why don't we go after that? And number two, why did we go build a new soccer stadium? If it's so important for us to fix the roads and so important for us to fix the drainage, why are we voting to spend money for a new soccer stadium?
With all due respect to my counterpoint here, first of all, I do design streets and drainage, and you don't. And the streets are designed to convey water. The biggest problem that we have is that over 50% of our city is built prior to World War II. We have areas in our city that are going to flood unless we revise the drainage system for sheet flow. We have to get the water out of the neighborhoods. We're having people that flood from simple rainfall events. Now, relative to the Metro dollars, within this system, within that petition drive, there's also a clause in it that says any third-party money that the city gets for mobility, whether it's from Metro, state, or federal government, automatically goes into this fund. So that money will be going into that fund. Now, we realize that our contract with Metro expires in 2014, and there's going to have to be another discussion, another vote on getting that money into the fund, but it's planned to be in that fund.
Let's take the money that they owe us right now. Why don't you lead the way on City Council to go get that $160 million that Metro owes us right now and put it to use?
You have my commitment that I will be working on that after we leave today.
Well, and there are other monies that the city can go after, and of course we need to have a continuing support system in the state of Texas. Otherwise, somebody could ask the question, Steve Costello, why is it that we're making all these special pleading efforts on behalf of engineers, for instance, when we know that the city could be stepping up to the plate and helping the infrastructure that would be called the social infrastructure? And if we're not going to do it, given the kind of problems we have with poverty in this city, then it's going to come from the state of Texas through sales tax, and we know that number is falling. So are you guys for, you, Steve, Bruce Hotze, are you for asking on behalf of the city of Houston that we get a more steady supply of funding from the state of Texas to cover the social needs that you're not covering?
Well, and of course that presupposes that the city has a role in social needs.
I thought that was Harris County Hospital District should take care of that, and we're taxed pretty damn well for that.
But the state has an $18 billion hole, and it's going to trickle down, and that means layoffs in the future if we don't do something, and/or compromises to social services. So my question is, given that we know the Republicans want to raise the sales tax, whether or not you guys are for that, or whether or not you want to eliminate certain exemptions to the sales tax that keeps us from getting $30 billion in the state of Texas.
I don't know anything about anybody wanting to raise the sales taxes. I want to control the growth of government to inflation and population. Steve doesn't think that government needs any controls. He wants to eliminate the existing controls in the city charter that limit the growth of government to inflation and population. That's part of this charter change. He wants the government to be able to grow, and I still contend there is no such thing is a separate fund that these monies can be separated in, that the city council can't go get and spend however they want on soccer stadiums, on whatever, new museums or whatever they want to spend it on.
Stephen, what David is suggesting is the city has a significant role in helping, I guess, the social aspect of the agenda. Meaning he wants city government involved in people's lives, I guess, providing after-school programs, right, David?
True.
And God knows what else. I mean, is the city in a position to do those things when it's not even doing, like, the basic services? Because when you say the infrastructure is needed replacing and we could be facing a crisis, that means it's been neglected. So, and David's suggesting, I guess, maybe we need a fund for social activities. I don't know. Where are you at on that?
Well, before I answer the question, Bruce, I do appreciate you telling me what I'm for and what I'm not for. But as a very successful engineering business owner, I know how to run a business, and I'm on council to run council as a business and to work for the city. Okay, relative to the social program, there are a lot of very well-tended programs that the city works involved in. But they're a microcosm of the overall needs of the infrastructure. And I do think that there are people out here in this community that do need help that we need to reach out to. And so if there are programs at the state level that we can advocate for to get more money for the city, we're going to be doing that through our legislative councils.
You just passed a budget at the City of Houston. I saw that budget had about $1.45 billion just for public safety. And, everything else was just a minor expenditure other than public safety. Does the City of Houston, my image of the City of Houston is set up just to control, crime and fires and, support the deal crowd, developer, engineer, architect, and lawyers. Everybody else is on their own. That's called Free Enterprise Houston, right?
The question, David.
Is that a question?
Yeah. Is that what we have? Is that free enterprise gone crazy?
No, I'll address a little bit of the budget. Yes, we just approved the budget yesterday, in fact, last night, and about 60% of it is for public safety. But you have to understand, for our community, we have to have a safe community. And there are a lot of issues and expenditures that are required to make sure that we do have a safe community. And so as a council member, we're charged with trying to make sure that money is being spent wisely. And as we go through the budget during the year, we'll be investigating and making sure that those monies are spent wisely. But no matter what you advocate for the city, whether it's housing, parks, quality of life, infrastructure, economic development, if you don't have a safe community, it's all moot. So we have to really focus on our safe community. Obviously, it can't dominate the budget to 70 or 80%. In fact, most large municipalities, that's about what public safety is taking, is about 60% of their budgets.
Well, I guess, Mr. Hotze, I have to ask you, we've got dropouts all over the place in this city and in our school districts. Dropouts means lost revenue and it costs because they go to prison and they need other types of support services. So where's the argument on your side for sustaining a standard of living in the city of Houston so that we don't have to have nothing but cops everywhere?
Well,
and jails and prisons.
Certainly, you can't get rid of the humanity and their flaws. Certainly, we have flaws, and we can't get rid of that. So we certainly have to go out there and control the crime that's out there. In terms of the schools, HISD gets twice as much money as the City of Houston, and they should be able to take care of this. The HISD has not grown in the last 20 years. It's basically the same, but their income has gone up. They ought to be able to address these with new, smarter deals. If they need to go and build more KIPP academies and things of that sort to take care of those kids, then I think they ought to go do it. But they ought to change. They can't be doing the same policies and the same things they've done for 20 years and expect the same different results. They've got to change. They've got to be looking at new schools that do good things, like KIPP Academy, that can make changes in these people's lives.
David, so I think Bruce is suggesting the city has no business being in those things. The school district should do their job.
City has a responsibility to advocate on behalf of citizens, and if the citizenry is failing, after all, the pressure on cops to control crime is so bad these days that you have, cops beating up kids. 4 of them got indicted. You had cops chasing a kid on a bike, and through a neighborhood, he's dead. So the pressures on cops to do a job is getting to be so serious that there are abuses, in my opinion, all over the place because our social safety net is disintegrating.
I tend to agree with Bruce relative to HISD, which was really, I was surprised. But we do, as a city, do have a vested interest in having a successful HISD. And if we can help in any way to make sure that gets accomplished, it's common knowledge that after-school programs are helpful in keeping kids out of trouble and helping public safety. If we can participate in that level and also advocate for a strong ISD, because trying to recruit people here, trying to recruit jobs and businesses here, if we don't have a good school system, we won't get those people.
Well, and in fact, if you look at a number of major cities, Chicago comes to mind, New York, where the mayor and city council have been involved in the school districts. I mean, directly involved, publicly, in some cases, taking over the schools entirely. I mean, I think that David and Bruce have made a pretty good case that our school districts, a lot of our local school districts, are failures. And so, is the city of Houston going to look into getting more involved in telling the school districts how to do their job?
No.
I hope not.
Not this council member won't.
There are enough people trying to tell the school districts what to do. They certainly need to reinvent themselves.
Another issue that both of you can talk about has to do with whether or not the city of Houston is damaged by the reputation of having the dirtiest air in the country. And now we have a war going on between the EPA and the state regulatory commission that decides who gets permits to pollute. So do we not need to be on the side of the EPA so that we can have a better image in the city and attract business here? Or are we going to be with Rick Perry?
That's an interesting question. The Wall Street Journal came out with the cross-references of all the cities that had grown this over the last year. And the metropolitan area that grew fastest of all these, Houston was among the top, in the top 2 or 3, the Houston metropolitan area. And the city of Houston grew also. So at some point, I think it's 0.9%. So it's still growing. So to say that all these things aren't attractive belies the truth. People are walking with their shoes. If they didn't like the air, if they didn't like the business structure, if they didn't like the streets, if they didn't like the drainage, they wouldn't be coming.
They are walking here from Mexico, is what I'm thinking.
No,
that's the growth you're seeing.
No, if you looked at Michigan and California, people are leaving in droves from these places to come to Texas. Texas has the real net growth of real citizens to the state of Texas and to the city of Houston. Real citizens of the United States are coming to Texas. That's the real truth. And so that really tells the story about how great Houston is. It's great entrepreneurial spirit, low tax basis, low control of people and industries, and the more we pile on, higher taxes, more control, and more developmental cost, the less people are going to come here, the less free spirit we're going to have.
Being a product of the East Coast, coming here and benefiting from the entrepreneurial spirit, having a successful engineering practice for 19 years, I appreciate your comments. But to get back to your question, which has to do with air quality and the turf fight between TCEQ and EPA, I'm sort of siding with the state. I have a real problem when the federal government's coming down regulating, and this is just a turf battle between 2 agencies. And if you think about what they're regulating, they're trying to regulate the discharge from a chemical facility globally rather than from individual units. That's just a turf fight that they have to fight.
You're not concerned that the head of the TCEQ is a crop scientist from A&M who believes that climate change is a joke?
Well, there's a lot of people who believe that, David.
I'm just asking Steve whether or not you're placing your faith in that organization versus
that's a board
versus
staff.
Which puts you on the opposite side of our former Mayor Bill White.
Well, my position is anytime we can improve air quality, that's fine, but this turf battle is between 2 agencies.
And in fact, isn't it true, Stephen, that if you go back over the last 20 years, the air quality in Houston has gotten better over that time?
Yes, it has. In fact, there's always been an ongoing debate between both TCEQ and EPA about whether or not the air quality monitoring system that we have is really adequate, and is it accurate?
You said
it's an ongoing debate.
You can close this out here, Mr. Hotze, by telling us whether or not we're a sanctuary city, given the growth that I'm suggesting is here from Mexico.
There's certainly a lot of illegals that come here, and they're certainly tolerated. A lot of people get jobs and hire them. You can see them on the streets. You can drive down West Park. There are thousands of them. God bless them. They're hungry. They're here, and there's nobody stopping them at the border. And if I were them, I'd probably come too.
So, Mr. Hotze's for open borders. How about you, Mr. Costello?
This community is a great community, and we're a diverse community. I don't believe we're a sanctuary city. We monitor illegal immigration. We monitor that through the Secure Community program, and I'm an advocate for that. I think people should come here and have a right to work, and they can work. But I do wish they would come legally.
There you go, David. Legal immigration, boy, that's an innovative idea.
Stop the border.
Very nice discussion, guys. Thanks for being here with us. It was a challenging discussion. It's spirited, and I enjoyed it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that was good. You learned something, David. That's always good.
And you all can see a follow-up to this discussion by going to HoustonPBS.org and checking us out at Red, White, and Blue at that site. So check that out. And until next time, get informed and get active.